So Beaplays may have officially left the internet as of yesterday because she removed over 111 million views off her YouTube channel, and she's also purged her Discord server and has been rebranding her Twitch. So we have a lot to talk about today, and we're just gonna get straight into it. So for those of you that don't know, and I'm trying to keep this pretty vague because a lot of my videos, they get kind of demonetized if I touch too much on it. But basically, over the past several months, allegations surrounding Beaplays have surfaced online regarding certain behaviors that occurred several years ago. And basically what ended up happening was Beaplays put out a statement, it wasn't well received, and then she kind of just went radio silent up until the past couple weeks here, where she was actually caught streaming on her Twitch account that she has since rebranded and completely wiped all of her channels yesterday. So starting off with the channels, her main YouTube channel, which is now using a different name, if you look at this graph here, you can see that every day she's gaining about 4,000 views up until Sunday, which typically this is about a day behind, so I would say it was like late Saturday night, that she went ahead and removed a bunch of videos, which is why there's a minus 111 million, almost 112 million views that were removed off her channel. And this occurs when you delete videos off your channel. So she, I guess, just purged all the videos off of her channel. I'm not quite sure where that would be. Maybe she still won't be associated with it anymore. Maybe people were mass reporting the videos and she was getting warnings, I don't know, but those videos were all removed off her channel. Now, on top of that, her main channel, her main one that was called Beaplays, is now called Not Here Anymore, and the the username is Not Here Anymore -E5C. Now, I've seen a lot of people saying this is what happens when your channel gets deleted. That is not true. When your channel is deleted, it will say channel deleted, channel not found, channel not available. It will not have this different name. This is a name that she manually put on this channel, so she did this. This was her putting that name on there, and she's allowed to, obviously purge a channel if she doesn't want to be on it anymore. However, the same thing occurred to basically all of her other channels, including her Minecraft channel, where it is also labeled Not Here Anymore and has the username Not Here Anymore -T8M. So if you guys are trying to search up stats for Beaplay's channel, you will need to search up the new usernames, which are the @ symbols, and then those long usernames, because at the time of recording this video, it looks like somebody actually claimed Beaplay's channel username, which I thought on YouTube there's like a 2-week period where nobody could claim the same username, but I guess not. I don't know, because when I was searching it up, another channel had the username Beaplays, so that's interesting. Now, on top of that, there's been a lot going on with other platforms of hers, including her Twitter. She basically has just, removed everything off there. It is still protected, and her LinkedIn also still says that she has finished her employment doing UGC relationships as of October 2025. So her LinkedIn is still the same as well. However, on LinkedIn, she has been reposting or at least interacting with content over the past month that is inspirational and kind of talks about, taking your time and stuff like that. So I thought that was interesting. Now, when it comes to her Discord server, the link to it no longer works. So I'm assuming she turned the joins off. Now, one of you guys actually reached out to me, and I'll see if I can find the screenshot, but they were in Beaplay's server from before this whole thing happened, and they didn't leave because they were wondering if she'd make a statement, I guess. And what ended up happening was they said they witnessed her purging large portions of her Discord server. So she renamed it instead of, I think it was like Bee's Beans or something before, and now it's labeled Trissy's Tavern. And then on top of that, she was kicking members out of it. This user that opened this ticket, which I'm not sure how accurate this is because I'm not in the server, they claimed that over 15,000 people were removed out of the server in one single day, and channels are being edited. And then when I went ahead and looked up the Trissy Tavern Discord server on a third-party service, it told me there was only 87 members. So I'm not quite sure if that's the case. If that was the case, why would you purge your entire Discord server? I don't know, you wouldn't just make a new one, but I'm not quite sure. So you guys let me know if you've heard anything about that. Now, when it comes to the Twitch, in my last video, I talked about how Beaplays seems to have deleted her Twitch. However, you guys were quick to let me know that I guess on Twitch, if you remove your username and someone searches your old username, it doesn't come up, which is interesting. However, she allegedly renamed her old Twitch account to Trissy, which we learned from the last video that I made that is like a nickname for Beatrice in the UK. So that's why she's going by Trissy, I guess. And in the description, it just says Trissy streams Overwatch 2. And if you go down, she still has the same panels that she had when she had her Beaplays account. However, this About Me section I thought was interesting. It reads, "Hey, I'm Trissy. I love music, movies, long talks, supporting others, and seeing people succeed in their dreams, also biscuits. I've been content creating for over 9 years, starting my old Minecraft YouTube channel back in 2014. I've been streaming on Twitch since 2016 and became a partner on July 12th, 2017. Content creating is no longer my full-time job, so we're just here for vibes and to have fun in my favorite games." And she says there's no schedule right now, just when she wants to, usually most Saturdays at least. So this is certainly interesting because I've seen a lot of people, spreading the rhetoric that, Beaplays, I guess, shouldn't be allowed to come back to the internet, and how, you know, here she's labeling or confirming that, you know, she's not a full-time creator anymore. And honestly, I feel like this issue is pretty polarizing, and here's why. At the end of the day, what happened with the Beaplay situation and the allegations that have been spread online primarily stem from the really, really serious ones primarily stem from one individual who had a relationship with her several years ago. There are other allegations floating around regarding mistreatment, not being spoken to very politely. There's been people that have come out talking about their negative experiences with her, and that's something that's going to come out regardless. No matter what YouTuber gets canceled for whatever reason, when they're being canceled, there's going to be people that come out of the woodwork to try and like get like a quick buck and a click from being like, oh, she mistreated me, she did this. And I want to be clear that I think some of the people that have come out are obviously telling the truth, and they were obviously mistreated, or maybe they had a bad experience, and that's totally valid. However, there is a lot of people that are also coming out saying, oh, one time she looked at me funny. Babe, stop. Stop, okay? That's not comparable to other people who are like spoken down to, or people who are allegedly victimized. Like, that is not the same, okay? Like, calm down. What I think is important to note is that the main propeller, or the main, I guess, you know, movement that was pushing people to try and, quote, cancel Beaplays was her alleged relationship a couple years ago with somebody else, right? And I'm not going to get too much into that in this video, but what I think is important to note is that people have been saying, oh, because you did that with someone at the time who was allegedly a child, or you're speaking with a child, right, that you shouldn't be creating content for children. And I do agree to a degree if those allegations are truthful, which I have to be very clear they're allegations. I don't think that somebody who has allegations of that nature should be making content for kids, because I don't think that's supposed to be your niche. I think, you know, the best way to be doing it would be making only content for adults going forward, because, you know, I don't think it's fair to be interacting with a demographic that is very vulnerable when you have those kinds of allegations, regardless of if they're true or not. I think that's just like poor taste, and I personally wouldn't do that. However, I think people fail to recognize is that the main thing that has been pushing Beaplays to be, quote, canceled by the internet has been the allegations between her and the person that she allegedly had a relationship with. And what I think people forget is that that person that she had that relationship with is the only person that can accept her apology. And I do want to clarify, I believe when she put out like her tweet, like her statement over Twitter, that it was just like a general statement, and I can't quite remember, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the victim or somebody involved in the situation had said that she hadn't apologized directly to the victim, and she was like, oh, I already apologized years ago, whatever. But the truth of it, and the thing that I believe, is that at the end of the day, the only person that can accept Beaplay's apology is her alleged victim, okay? And I think a lot of people are trying to be internet crusaders, and I think maybe they don't intend for it to be perceived this way. However, when you behave in a way where you are demanding an apology from someone who personally did not wrong you, I think it comes across performative. And obviously, any apology that Beaplays would have given would have been considered performative because it wasn't directed towards the victims or alleged victims in the situation, right? And I think a lot of people, obviously, you grew up watching Beaplays and you feel betrayed, and I understand you feel betrayed by the allegations that have come out, but I think I myself am not in a position to accept her apology. I can, you know, critique it and say, hey, this seems a little bit contradictory, or hey, this seems kind of However, I'm not in a position to accept that apology, and I think a lot of people want to continue to crucify somebody and to bully them online. But at the end of the day, I think the only thing that matters is how the victims or alleged victims in this situation, whether or not they have accepted her apology. Because at the end of the day, the general public who wasn't directly impacted by this, including myself, we don't have a right to accept the apology or say if it's not good enough. Only the victims in this situation do. And I think, you know, if things were resolved with the victims or with the law enforcement or however they want to approach this, and, you know, she was getting help and she was getting the support she needs, whatever, and she wanted to come and make content, I think that's fine. But at the end of the day, I feel like we know so little about, you know, what conversations have been had behind the scenes with the alleged victims and potentially with Trissy or Beaplays, however she wants to be called now, that I think it's, you know, it's a tricky situation to form an opinion on. Personally, if, you know, stuff hasn't been resolved, I don't think it's right to be almost like parading around as somebody else to continue to make content, because I understand, you know, at the end of the day, I think any content creator enjoys making content, and that's cool. However, trying to like rebrand yourself and, you know, just kind of like hiding and not saying anything about it, I don't know, it just seems kind of bizarre to me. And I understand from what you guys have told me that during the Twitch streams, it's on sub only or something, chat, so regular people can't just like comment on it, which I understand. However, I think it's important to protect your peace, but I don't think it's valid to avoid accountability, and that's what I'm worried is happening here. I'm not sure if things have been addressed with the alleged victims in this situation, or if anything's been resolved, or if it's just her just trying to make more content without, you know, the social stigma of what has allegedly happened. I'm not quite sure. Regardless, though, I think people are, valid in their concerns with her continuing to create content on the internet. I understand Overwatch is an older game and for older, individuals rather than like 5-year-olds. So I think that's a good step in the right direction. However, I feel like with circumstances like this, it's really important for people to take a break from the internet and take a step back. And I understand how creating content and being in the content creation space can become addictive. And so, I think a lot of the time creators will have some unhealthy relationships with the internet or with their channel, their subscribers, whatever, where they basically don't take the time they need for themselves. However, I really feel like in this situation, especially with the gravity of the allegations that have come out, that I would highly encourage anybody with these allegations, not just Beaplays, to take a break. Take a break from the internet, do some like self-discovery, go through therapy, do maybe some support groups, talk with people, just logging off the internet for a while. Because at the end of the day, I do feel like it's important to hold people accountable. However, I've seen a lot of people using Beaplays being transgender, or people trying to basically demonize her for being trans, and that's why she behaved this way, and then are painting other people in the trans community as inherently being evil, which I think is incredibly harmful. And unfortunately, it gets further, perpetuated when she's like hiding things off her channel, or when she's like coming back but not coming back and posting things but then taking them down. It just kind of further like stirs up the drama. And I think the best thing to do in these kind of situations is when take a break, log off. Don't make any rash decisions, don't make any like, I'm gonna wipe everything and delete everything. Take a break. Second of all, address the concerns that have been brought to your attention personally first, and then publicly if you so choose, right? I think it's important to address, the concerns and allegations that have been brought up with the people directly involved first, rather than going straight to the internet and making like a statement about it and being like, hey guys, blah, 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 blah. And it's kind of like a statement that kind of just like teeters over like, or around, I guess, the actual like issue at hand. It doesn't really address anything, which just makes people more mad. And then when you're like posting things, taking it down, renaming stuff, taking videos down, re-uploading videos, turning comments off, then turning comments back on, and then streaming, then not streaming, and all this sort of stuff, it just kind of stirs up the drama even more. And I feel like further perpetuates, the drama being brought up. Because at the end of the day, if she would have just taken a break and never said anything and just gone and like, figured out what she had to do in real life to get everything together and figure out what her next steps are going to be, I feel like this would not have been dragged on this long. I think everybody would have forgotten about it by now, which I don't think is valid, because at the end of the day, these concerns and allegations are incredibly serious in nature. However, I do just feel like, at some point, like the constant like chasing of what is she doing next kind of takes away from the gravity of what has happened. And, it causes people to almost go into like this sort of like a witch hunt mind state or state of mind, I guess, where they just constantly try to go after somebody instead of addressing what is actually important in this situation, which is what has allegedly occurred. People are using this as like a thing to go and like find her and track her down and find out which channel she's on and blah, 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 blah. When in reality, we should be focusing on what has been brought up, what has been discussed, what are lessons we can learn from this, what are red flags that we ignored, what is like stuff that anybody can take from the situation, and how can we avoid this from happening again? And that's what I feel like is really unfortunate in this situation, is that this could have been used as a learning, opportunity for a lot of people on the internet. It could have been used as an opportunity for Beaplays to take a break from the internet, recover, speak with somebody, figure out her options, decide what she wanted to do. But instead, it kind of turned into this weird like PR thing where everybody was trying to defend themselves, and then everybody's rushing out to come up with their own document about Beaplays, and it just became this whole like honestly dramatic situation that it really didn't have to be. And I understand people might think that with channels like mine reporting on it, that perpetuates that, and that's obviously not my intention. My intention is to just give you guys information. However, I do think it's important to have transparency in media and have transparency with stuff that's occurring online. And I understand not everybody has access to Discord, not everybody has access to Twitter, same with other platforms and stuff like that. And so I try to do my best with the resources that I have to, bring light to situations. But again, I really think that the focus here is being taken away from the actual issue at hand, which is the allegations, and it's just being focused on what is Beaplays doing, what's going on, blah, 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 blah. And so my point in saying this is, at the end of the day, I think, permanently witch hunting somebody isn't valid. I think the allegations that have been spread are incredibly serious, and I don't undermine them, and I think that it's something that needs to be handled in real life. And at the end of the day, internet crusaders online reporting about it isn't going to solve the issue. The issue can only be solved offline with the proper authorities and resources. And it's unfortunate to me that with this kind of behavior and just kind of like what, in my opinion, seems like dodging accountability, it further, dramatizes the situation and takes away from the key issues at hand, which should be holding creators accountable and ensuring a safe environment where parasocial relationships with your fan bases or other content creators don't cross the line and become inappropriate. But regardless, there's obviously a lot to address here, and I don't think Beaplays shouldn't be allowed to create content ever again. However, I feel like a break is needed for everybody involved to actually sort out what has happened and to address it properly without like the internet crusaders and keyboard warriors in the way. But regardless, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye!